As we always do, if I can get a thumbs up that it's okay for you to be a participant in our group here, if not even a shout out, yes, we're good to go. We are recording this. This is our last webinar. People will keep coming in as we are, just human nature. This is our last webinar of the year, which I'm really excited to close it out with Taryn. I met Taryn last month, and I have a complete adoration for speech language pathologists in general. My daughter needed speech language pathology, but every time she presented for it, she never got the orders. And I certainly have learned the value in what they do as a profession. So I almost feel as though, and this is my personal opinion, but I'll back it up with data soon. I almost feel as though anybody with any kind of a brain injury should have a speech language pathology assessment first. Like, and you all know that I'm a big eyeball person, right? And so, hey, Waring, I'm glad you're here. So I love the fact that somebody in speech language pathology has now integrated how you deal with the deficits of your injury to now accommodate your life, right? And Taryn is really pulling it full circle. Now, that is not to say that that's all you need, right? You do definitely have to have more speech language pathology, but I am lining up this crazy series of speakers from cannabis to more psilocybin research and actual researchers for next year. So I'm really, really excited to bring that forward to everybody. Also in the chat for the newcomers, if you do not see it, but there is a PDF, which is Taryn's Circle of Life that she wants us all to do interactively. And I do have to say at the end, we'd always do our Q&A, but I also want to tell you a little bit about the data findings that we have been validated by MIT. And so it's your data, and I'm super excited. I'm going to give you a teeny insight into that. But with no further ado, as I already introduced Taryn, we met last month. She attended a webinar. She's unbelievable with her skill set. She actually really doesn't need any more of an introduction. You can hear her cheerleader. She's got her screens ready to go. So I'm going to give her the co-host capability. And as people keep coming in, we will make co-host. There we go. We'll just let them keep adding on. All right, take it away, Taryn.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, hello, and thank you so much to Lynn and Power of Patience. First of all, I literally adore the name Power of Patience, because as a speech language pathologist, there's like a little play on words there, right? And I adore the use of language as we recover and heal, and just like also just I'm a nerd. I'm a language nerd, full-fledged. So a little bit about my background. I am a speech language pathologist. Thanks, Brandon. I got your thumbs up. I loved it. When you announce that you're a nerd, I love that I get the thumbs up, because people get it.
Yeah.
People get it. So I'm going to try to do my screen share. So bear with me for just one moment. Let's see, just going to do screen share. And I'm going to make sure that you guys can see up on the screen the presentation. How does lifestyle support brain health and healing? Here it goes. Well, there's me. Here's what we're going to talk about today. We are going to talk about how brain health and healing is so much more than just the brain, right? It's not the brain within a bubble. The brain is a lot of the center for the communication, and I say communication with both the outside world and with the inside world, right? Within yourself. It's sending the signals, it's receiving the signals, and when we are recovering from things like brain injury, stroke, concussion, any of that, the brain-based things, at first it's very health heavy. And I say health heavy because you've got to get to the appointments, do the lab work, put in the medical energy and effort for healing. Then there comes this point where, okay, you're on this like maintenance medical plan, and you're like, what's next? Well, life is next. And finding balance again is absolutely part of your journey. Absolutely. And reintegrating what that looks like after brain injury is super important because it's what makes you a whole person. And when we are so focused on brain recovery, it's very easy to check off the medical boxes per se. And I don't say easy as in it's easy to find those people. I say it kind of gives us a little set of things to do. Do this lab work, get this image, go to this specialist. Often there's hurdles within it, but then we get into life again. And doing all of those things while doing life is really a different thing to navigate. So I am a speech language pathologist by trade. I went back to school and became an integrative nutrition health coach through the Institute of, it's IIN. And then I also added a certification in brain injury specialist with the Brain Injury Association of the United States. During the pandemic, I opened my own private practice called The Well Brain, which is my combination of skill set. So disclosure wise, that I am the owner and CEO of that company. And it is my combination of cognition, lifestyle, and how that makes you a holistic person and holistic recovery. All right, so the circle of life that you guys hopefully are able to open. This is from the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. I cannot take any beautiful ownership of this gorgeous design, but when I saw it, I fell in love with it. And how graduates of IIN use the circle is what makes them different. And how I use the circle is for cognition and brain health. So you see all those little categories or pie slices. And the goal of this is to, in a snapshot, give a self-satisfaction or dissatisfaction for each category. The further your dot is to the outer edge of the circle is showing more satisfaction in that area. The closer the dot is to the center, the less satisfied you are. And what this does is it gives you a visual. Because we're looking at lifestyle, and when we think about, oh, I could do more of this, or I should do more of this, and we get into those woulda, shoulda, couldas. And instead, this kind of makes something very abstract a little more concrete, which we love in the world of brain injury recovery. And I also love that there's color connection, because many times with people with brain injury recovery, having it have not only a visual, but if we can make some sort of connection to color. When I think of joy, and this is a very personal perspective, when I think of joy, I kind of think of the color purple for me, and how we label things maybe by color or number. It helps us, again, make something abstract more concrete. So I am going to give you 2 minutes to fill in or take a little snapshot of your circle of life. I do not want you to think too hard about this. So I just saw a question in the chat. Absolutely. So here I am in career. I'll land on career. Isn't that ironic, as I am talking about the well brain? And I'm going to put myself way out here for satisfaction. Oops. And I made myself go back. Sorry about that. Interesting. Now I can't go back. There we go.
There you go.
So you can use the lines or the center of the circle in any way. So I am very satisfied in the area of career. I will tell you health-wise today, not so satisfied. I had some sort of allergic reaction and am covered in an awful rash. So I'm going to not rate that one so well today. When we think about these, don't think too hard. Go with your instinct. Go with your intuition. And label these little categories. You can be highly satisfied in spirituality and have and believe and have no strong belief, but you're satisfied in where you are in spirituality. Physical activity, I like to even label this movement, right? It doesn't have to be a standard exercise program. All right. So I hope you guys at least have a couple of dots. And you're going to draw exactly, you guys are the best. You're going to draw lines from dot to dot so you can, it looks like a little jagged web. That's a great description. Beautiful description. Awesome. And you will quickly take a little peek and see that, wow, this is where we're at with your individual journey of lifestyle balance. So now what? Let's talk about health, because it's the easy one to go for when we're talking about brain injury recovery. We have these health goals, and we've got to all of a sudden identify them maybe a little bit differently than we ever thought we would in the past. And the reason for that is because you have a purpose, healing your brain. Having goals, even if you do not have the language, it doesn't have to be medical terminology, right? Another really important thing is building your team. Building your brain recovery team. I cannot shout that from a taller building with a louder megaphone. If you are dissatisfied with a provider, find a new one. It is not, we do not make friends with everyone. So not every doctor, nurse, care provider, chiropractor is a match for us, but there are plenty of those providers, and it is worth finding the individuals that you go, yep, that's my person. That's my person. Another really important element of health is to be organized. Going into these appointments is physically demanding, cognitively draining, and having a system of organization for each of your specialists is truly a game changer. It is worth putting in the work to get your folder, binder, and have it per specialist. Have your questions in there, your reports in there, so that when you go to that appointment, you're taking that binder. I'm going to use a funny example that a client did. Having a gastroenterologist, they grabbed this is a good pun, a brown folder and a brown pen and brought it to the gastroenterologist. And you know what? They laughed and giggled about it every time. So they also found a little joy in having to go to the gastroenterologist with their brown folder. So that spoke to them, it connected, they knew what they were bringing to their appointment, and also it helps them be organized for going into that appointment, because when they think of a question, it goes directly in that specialist's folder. It's not in this overwhelming place of where did I put that post-it note that had that question for that doctor. And the other thing that I'm a huge proponent of is advocacy. You do not need the language. You just need to be able to describe to someone what you experience on a day-to-day basis. Take pictures of a challenge. Take a video of a challenge. If you cannot demonstrate it in the office or verbalize it in a way that you feel communicates with that provider, show them in another way, and make sure that you are heard. And it is okay to say, I don't think you understand my question. I'm going to ask it in another way. You be clear about what you're experiencing in a day-to-day with brain injury recovery, because one of the important things to remember is that in brain injury recovery, there's not only this kind of trajectory of peaks and valleys, but you can be doing one task one day and it be extremely successful. But then another day, that exact same task is an extreme challenge. And that is based on the fact that none of these things exist in a bubble. How you sleep, how you eat, how you exercise, all of those things have impact on your day-to-day functioning, which again reminds us why we're looking for balance. Physical activity, or what I like to say, movement. So if there is anyone in the room that is either a collegiate or a high school athlete or experiences any of those, there is a process for return to play. However, I do not encourage anyone to just trust the system. I encourage someone to know what return to play looks like. It is scaffolded and built on itself how to increase and return back to play. Now, how do we do that in the real world of return to our favorite activity of pickleball after a brain injury? It is the same sort of process. It is not go from not playing to expecting to play a 45-minute game. It is, can I be in the environment? Can I balance? Can I do one element of that activity and then see if you can tolerate it and then make a progression? But there is a standard return to play process that exists, and you can actually find that at mass.gov. Movement and exercise, and I intentionally put them next to each other. Movement versus exercise. There's a difference. The brain needs movement. Like it's not an if. The brain needs movement. It does not have to be structured. It is walking the dog, taking the stairs, parking 3 extra parking spots further than maybe you want to. It is laundry trips. Instead of carrying, one pile of clothes, you're carrying the basket. That's a movement. It is giving yourself credit for all the movement we do in our day-to-day, because that counts. That counts. It is moving with purpose. There is actually research that proves that even visualizing movement has benefit. There was a study done of 2 groups of people who were taught to play a particular song on a piano. And half of those people were given a piano to practice on. And the other half of those people were shown the finger strokes. And their job was to either practice on the piano or practice the finger strokes. And they were allowed to practice the finger strokes in their head, visualizing. Both groups demonstrated the ability to play the song effectively. If you are intentionally visualizing, I am picking up my right leg and stepping it with heel, rolling to toe, there is still benefit to the visualization. No, I don't recommend you do it all visually. But if you're working on a particular muscle that's giving you trouble and it's particularly fatigued, don't not work on it still, right? Imagine it, visualize it, and then move with purpose. Maybe it's reaching for a jar with your hand that's giving you a little trouble, and you're reaching and you're working on that grasp. That's purpose. Movement with purpose, because you're retraining your brain while you're doing that. Home cooking. Oh, a big topic in brain injury recovery. Huge. Because the kitchen is chaotic. The kitchen has this vestibular demand. The kitchen has auditory demands. The kitchen has safety demands. And when you drop those pots and pans, talk about a startle reflex. It's important that you're recognizing, first of all, the first thing is to recognize and give yourself credit that there is executive function in there. Your reading comprehension if you're following a recipe. You're sequencing things, because if you make a recipe out of order, it's not going to taste the same. And you're planning ingredients. You have time awareness. I better not leave that in the oven for too long. And the kitchen safety is another really big one that often occupational therapy will be involved in as well. Now, not only are you doing the cognitive demands of the kitchen, but when you choose to go into that kitchen, what you choose to give your body as it heals is so important. You know, when we're demanding so much of the brain in recovery, it is often very easy to reach for the easier to cook items, prepackaged, frozen things. Absolutely. And don't mishear me in the sense that those definitely have a place, and there's some in my freezer. But it is just as easy to grab whole items, whole fresh fruits, vegetables, all of those things. And who's to say you need to cut it up? If you want to eat a pepper, take a bite of the pepper just like an apple. It is more about the choices you make to fuel your brain recovery. In post-brain injury, we know that the brain needs more calories as it's recovering. And you also need to heal this inflammatory response that's happening. Things like the processed items can be very inflammatory and very triggering, and actually very counterproductive to brain health and healing. Things like proteins, healthy fats, oils, and things that are high in omega-3s have a very important role in brain health and recovery. There's information out there that very much supports the use of the Mediterranean diet and Mediterranean styles of cooking for brain health and healing. The important thing is to pay attention to how your body reacts. Post-brain injury, we often see that things you maybe have eaten in the past have a different response in your body. So not ignoring the fact that you used to be able to tolerate eating X, but now it's not settling right. Being mindful of what you put in to your body, and also being mindful of how it impacts your body. Gonna check for questions. Jessica, oh, wow. Ironman marathoner prior to your concussion. I'm going to use the word, you're not sure if you can return yet.
Oh, I love that, Taryn. Yeah, I answered her as well. And I wanted at the end to discuss that because my daughter had the same, well, maybe the same. We'll explore that. But she was an athlete as well, Taryn. So hang in there.
Yes. And I call it the case of the Yetis.
Oh yeah. Sugar. Oh yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah. We'll get to that. Okay.
Yeah. So the Mediterranean style of cooking, it's very fish based. They use a lot of oils, good fats, the good fats, not the processed fats. Very easy to take a look at. If you type in Mediterranean style cooking, there's a lot of research with brain health. That's out there. Okay, sugar. You crave sugar because you eat sugar. That's a fact. And I say that because it is essentially the same sort of addictive quality of many drugs. And I'm not being, over exaggerating. It is addictive. So when we eliminate sugar, it is a process that your body has to go through, and it will crave it. It will want it. It might even be angry at you for not giving it to it. But it has no real place in brain injury recovery. It's a hard habit to kick. Let's also talk about home environment as part of that circle, right? Oh, this is another hot topic in brain injury, because we're so overwhelmed with all the other things that somehow our space gets really hectic. And believe it or not, that does not serve your brain. A clutter-free space is good for a clutter-free brain. It's just work. There are processes that you can go through to slowly reorganize after injury. I do not encourage someone to upend their home and dump everything, but instead pick a drawer, pick a shelf, pick time that you can budget in that brain power and that physical power to get yourself reorganized. Functional organization versus aesthetic organization. Guess what? Doesn't have to look pretty if it works for you. After brain injury and in that recovery process, if those items are constantly being used and you put them in places that are triggering for you over your head, let's say, as you're reaching and that's messing with your balance, then it's not a functional place to organize it. It is also important to consider distractions in your environment. Okay. Things like color, texture, lighting. It's important because we know that like the color white is a very reflective color. And if you are someone that in your recovery finds that your visual sense is very triggered and you are surrounded by the beautiful, pristine white, it often can be visually triggering. It is why we start using things like blue blocking on computer screens. It is why we will often talk about desk lamps versus overhead lighting. If you are noticing that in your space, there is a particular color, light, or texture that constantly is kind of catching your attention, distracting you, causing you to have a sensory kind of reaction, the question is, does it serve you in that space? As Lynn was actually talking about early in the conversation, what our body's health and inflammatory response, right? Lynn experienced a mold issue, and post-traumatic brain injury, often our sensitivity for these sorts of chemical irritants, air quality irritants is heightened. Things like fragrances. Note the connection to fragrances and sensory triggering, headaches. This is something that, fragrance free is not just a trend in the world. It's healthier because many people are triggered by those sorts of things. Air quality, molds, textures, textiles, what they produce in your environment can be inflammatory further to your brain as you're trying to recover. These will all kind of increase your sensitivities. How much is that picture triggering everyone over there at desk?
Taryn, can I kind of jump in here for a second?
Absolutely.
Because our chat is really going great, which I love it, you guys. Keep it coming. I'm trying to keep up as you're going along. When we first launched the beta version of the dashboard, I was not as keen as I should have been to people's visual input as well as movement, even though, again, right, all the stuff that I had to go through with Natalie. But we put the dark option, the dark mode specifically, and it was when our interviewees that were brain injury survivors looked at even the logo, and we had bright, vibrant colors because I liked it, right? I wasn't thinking in a brain injury person's space, and we had to mute the colors, which we did intentionally because it hurt their heads. And I'm very grateful when I hear this input from people who are on the dashboard and how we can improve it for them. And the other thing too is that I don't have the brain injury, and I look at that clutter and it makes me crazy. So I try to always put myself in all of your spaces and places and see if it's hurting me, could it be exasperating you as well? And I do know I never understood a kitchen and how complicated a kitchen was until I watched Natalie try to cook. Um, and when I started to go back to work, we were afraid many times that we had so many stickers for her to turn the oven off, that we could have the house burned down at certain things. And there's a point where you have to make that jump and that leap of faith. And right, so what works for you? How do you work together so that you remind them? And so you guys, all of these questions I love hearing because it's helping me think, how do we make the app better for everybody in relationship to what Taryn's saying? And I never even knew how speech language pathology envelops all of this. I mean, it's so amazing. And the sound, we stopped moving things on the dashboard because it was hurting people's eyes as well too. So thank you for bringing all of this up. It's normal to have those problems when you have a brain injury.
Mhm. Yep. And being able to manage, it's not the ability to manage all of these things, but sometimes just the awareness that something is triggering you is a beautiful first step. When I am in this X space, I am noticing that I feel triggered. And then taking a look and thinking, what are my eyes seeing? What are my ears hearing? What is my body feeling? What is my internal process? Distractions, hunger, bathroom distracting, right? And how is it that I can ease or develop like some awareness that this is what's triggering me? Because just the awareness that something's getting me is a beautiful first step. Beautiful, because that is your light bulb. It gets you curious. It gets you curious to say, what can I do about this? How can I work within this? And then you start looking and bringing in the circle of life for that, right? Is it a home environment issue that's triggering you? And what can I curiously do about my space for that? Let's talk about relationships.
Just a second. I was wondering, Lynn Becker, you said there was an app. What's the name of the app that?
Yeah, Brandon, it's the app on Power of Patience. I will put it in the chat so you can log in, and we can also show you how to log in. But the app I designed for everybody in this space to identify and collect those triggers.
Okay.
So yeah, yep.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a cool awareness. That highlight brings you bring your attention to what's taking your attention. Relationships. This often comes down to communication. And obviously, as a speech pathologist background, I kind of weigh a little heavy in on this one. You want to be in the company of the people who give you energy, support you energy, celebrate your wins, and are there to encourage you to grow. we know that brain injury or not, there are people that we sometimes allow into our world that do the exact opposite of that. It is absolutely not selfish that when you are healing from something, that those people do not have a space in that healing process. It does not mean that they have to be gone forever. What it means is you have a job to do, and that's to heal and recover. And you can't have those relationship suckers taking from your cognitive, physical, or emotional energy when you've got the most important job to do, and that's to heal. You have to have the conversations. Do not assume that people know this either. Give people the opportunity for change and movement and progress. You want to have conversations about what your roles and relationships look like after and around injury. It is okay to say things like, I know that I used to be a part of this in our relationship, but that is not something that I can manage at this time. I can't wait to do it again. I can't wait to work on it, but it doesn't serve me. These conversations about roles and responsibilities are so important and also lead to some of the most beautiful growth and awareness, because we all don't know what each other's thinking. We don't know what it feels like to be in this invisible injury, right? So to communicate it is a gift opportunity of growth for yourself and for the person or people you're communicating with. It is also very important to recognize that some of these connections will grow, others will fade, and there will be more that come. Each one of those has served a place for you, can serve a place for you in the future, or maybe has no place at all. We mourn the losses, we recognize the friendship gains and connections, but there are also ways in which we can seek support and counseling to have those mediated conversations about relationship changes, status changes, responsibility changes in a very safe and comfortable place for all people. Social life. This one gets tricky because it goes right out the window early on. And that's because you've got a job to do, and it's heal yourself. However, we are human beings who seek other human beings. This blends beautifully with the relationship one because you want to be in the company of the people who support you and give you energy. You are going to communicate with someone about their support and their role. You know, one of the beautiful things within that I've noticed is that when someone is coming, you're going to join someone out, and this person has experienced a brain injury of some sort. Am I going with them to be their support person, or am I going with them to be their social person? And having that conversation is really important, because sometimes I have a really, really great friend who sustained a brain injury, and I will say, am I your helper or am I your friend before we go out? Because I know not to chit chat while we're walking through a distracting environment if I'm her helper. If I'm her friend, I'm going to chit chat while we're walking through the environment until she tells me to stop. But it's important to know what that person is expecting in the social situation. It's also important to know what you're expecting in that social situation. Communicating about the role in those social experiencing. You're going to consider your setting and time of day and strategies. A late night concert after 3 doctor's appointments, probably pretty triggering, depending on where you are in your journey. So find the place within your schedule for the social life, but it's okay to be particular.
Taryn, I have to add to that, and I apologize.
No apologies.
No, everyone, I cannot emphasize enough how important that message is, because walking, just on the street with my daughter, and, that was her exercise, was to try to to try to walk around the block. And because I didn't understand as her mom what was happening and we were not getting good direction by the doctors, I would fill a lot of the empty airspace with chatter. And she just needed to focus on being able to put one foot in front of the other and try to be straight. And again, we didn't know a lot of her deficits. I just knew what I kept seeing. So I have to tell you, it was such a big black hole and question mark for me as the caregiver. So people, please speak up. I cannot emphasize enough. And we weren't perfect, right? A lot of it ended up in a fight because she couldn't communicate and tell me precisely what she needed, and I didn't understand what was happening. That's huge what you just said. Am I your friend or your supporter? I mean, that is so right. So thank you for bringing that up.
Oh, that's beautiful. And the thing of the connection here for social life and relationships is so much of the interaction is coming from good intentions and heart. Like your example, walking with your daughter, the intention was for movement and companionship, and it's coming from this beautiful place and heart. And by no means did you mean to be a distraction.
Right.
But yet, in walking with my friend through a farmer's market, she looked at me and she said, "Do you see all the tents in this space? Look at the reflection of the sun off the tents. Do you hear the noise? She gave me this like sensory awareness, and she said, "This is why I can't talk and walk." And that was the most beautiful message that I carried into my practice, that communicating that with your loved ones, your friends in these social environments. I am also a person who has not sustained a brain injury. And to be highlighted about what my role is allows it to go so much smoother, and we get to do the fun things because I know what someone needs, and I'm also really comfortable asking. So I'm encouraging both the support people, the loved ones, and the thrivers, I'm going to call you, to share and speak up about what you need. You're going to plan and pace to attend the things that bring you joy. I don't say that as a question mark. I say it as a statement. If it fills you up, it has a place in your health and healing and recovery. Do the things that bring you joy. And there it is. It starts with the question, what brings you joy? What brings you joy? You're going through plenty, but what fills that joy bucket for you? It's very individual, but know that those experiences in your life need to exist. If you were someone who was a horseback rider, and maybe you can't get on the horse, still go to the barn. Do the things that bring you joy. I'm going to just check the chat. Oh, we're going to talk about finances. So perfect. We'll get there. I saw a comment about finances. Spirituality. Again, how you rate yourself in spirituality, whether you have a connection or not, it has a place in recovery in the sense that you just have to be comfortable in what you are spiritually claiming. Whether you believe in higher powers, spirits, or you don't believe in any of that, own it. Know what your connection is there. I do, however, put the power of hope under spirituality. So for anyone in this, listening to this, the power of hope is spiritual because it is the belief in something you can't necessarily see. It is the ability to heal something that you're not sure what that looks like. So the continued belief in that is some definition of spirituality, regardless of how you see that in other areas of your life. What's incredible to me is the word spirit actually is Latin, meaning breath. How many times within the world of brain injury health and recovery are we mindful to breathe? It has power for a reason. It can reset, re-energize, oxygenate, ground you, all of those both concrete scientific things and more spiritual connection things bring us back into the moment. It can look like a variety of things: meditation, prayer, stillness. It's whatever it is for you personally. For the brain, the power of higher thoughts and belief has only shown to improve outcome. Whatever that means for you, give it a place in your circle. Creativity after brain injury. Gosh, I have seen some of the most incredible things. Like, oh, it's almost as if there's this, with this abstract recovery process for something we can't see, there's so much beauty in creativity. And I don't mean totally arts and crafts creativity. Instead of the mindless default mode activities, get curious. What creative outlet? Just by being creative, you are building brain cells. Try the piece of creativity you never thought you would do because it's good for your brain. If you never thought you would draw, try drawing because it's good for your brain. You are expressing yourself and your own emotions through creativity. It is sharpening your fine motor and visual skills, and it is an outlet. It has a place for brain health. Getting creative about how you do things and get to places and manage your time and space is all things that you do after brain injury. That's creative. You have to navigate a world in a more creative way. So you are creative. It also has a place in filling time, and by accident, it's engaging your brain and building connections. Finances. Support is often needed to re-navigate what resuming financial management looks like. Within the role of speech language pathology and integrative nutrition, the same theme comes up: least restrictive support. It still means you have support, but it means that you're working through it and in a way that allows you to be successful, but also support it. You've got to find your trusted people, because obviously this can be a tricky situation when you've been managing finances all on your own. Things like prioritizing and budgeting and coming up with, again, there's my word, communication about your financial purpose. It is okay when people ask you, what do you need, to answer that question instead of that quick, nothing, I'm all set. Remember that by asking for help and support, the people who are able to provide the help and support also fill their bucket of joy. And we go right to that communication is 50-50. What you say and what they're able to say or act in return is their part of that communication. Your career. It's often a label to get, quote, back to normal. Ooh, it makes me cringe, right? What is the motivation to return to work? In the sense that, are you motivated to do the thing because it's expected, or are you motivated to do the thing because it wasn't just a job for you, it was a career, it was a passion, it brought you joy plus finances? There have been many people in my career that right away I got to get back to work, and then they realize I really hated my job. And okay, so go back to that job, but then start looking for something that really actually fills you up instead of takes it from you again. Ask yourself if you were working a job, a career, or working in your passion. Those are three very different things. A job you go to, a career you're stuck in, a passion you're living. Jobs and careers can be passions when they align right with your needs. You also need to know your rights for return to work, support systems within human resources, and disability services if you're in college or in high school. You still have return to work rights that are legal and supported. Communicating that you've experienced a brain injury of some sort is important to have a conversation with a safe agency within your work environment. There is also a return to work process. It is very likely not a all or nothing concept. Just like return to play, there is scaffolded return to work. Are you someone that was sitting at a computer for 8 hours a day and then expected to do that post-brain injury? Talk about triggers, right? There is a scaffolded return to work that has support and legal rights and needs to be communicated, because what you can't do is go back to work in setting yourself up to fail, because that's going to hurt you financially, in health, in happiness, in joy, in all of those other areas of life. Whereas if you can return to work in a process, to a career or a job that you love, there is all of that built right into the support. And I know this can be a really tricky situation, but there are rights that can support you. And if you're not feeling supported, definitely reach out for some resources on that. Last one is education. What's your background, certifications, degrees, skills, and how can you pull from them? It doesn't have to be exactly how you thought, designed, or created it previously, but you bring with you skills. Returning to learn process after concussion has a place in schools and is supported with accommodations and things that exist for IEPs, 504s, and disability services within colleges. Getting the resources up front is easier than trying to get the resources once you're struggling.
So I have to add to that one.
Please.
Those are great resources. I suspect there is, can everybody see this? Because I will also include Taryn's contact info when we send out the replay. If anyone is at school, up until college, at least this was in South Carolina, right? And I suspect states are different, similarly to how states have different policies for reimbursements and things like that for disabilities as well too. But we had to fight tooth and nail to get Natalie vision therapy assistance, a note taker,
Yes.
her own room to be able to take the test with extra hours and things like that. And I'm not going to tell you that it was easy, because we went through rigorous testing to prove that she had these cognitive deficits. We had to retest it. And these are hard on your brain.
They are.
And
brutal.
exhausting. Yeah. And they're not inexpensive, right? You get one because insurance says, oh, you already had one, you don't need another one. But then the school required one within X number of months of enrolling. It was really kind of to the point where the school gave people with ADHD problems much more leniency than somebody with a brain injury. The one example was we asked for larger print book type fonts. We were not asking them to buy it, just to order it. And they responded to us, can't you just use a magnifying glass? So you have to be prepared and I wasn't prepared. And so I kept emailing, and I put everything in an email, because after we were getting nowhere with these in-person meetings, I clearly could see it was going to be a she said, right? So I was extremely frustrated, and I started emailing up the chain to the dean, and then I found somebody on the board. I didn't necessarily want to have any fights, but you become argumentative because you're trying to become, somebody who can get integrated back into the space that you knew. So take a break if you need a break, but don't give up, right? Arm yourself with all sorts of information, just like what Taryn said. It is not, and get that help of a person in your corner as well too. So I just wanted to add that in, that's a crucial thing. And again, I did not know that this was all a part of speech language pathology and integrating people back into life. So
yeah, we are a little bit of a speech pathologists are like a little a zebra in the world of rehab. It's not what you expect, but you hear us coming.
I love it. I love it. So now let's open it up, everybody, to our Q&A.
I'm going to do stop screen share.
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
Okay. And go ahead and unmute yourselves and fire away.
Please.
I was just wondering what the email was for the organization you just had up there on the before the questions screen. You had the little information screen.
Yep, that is directly for me at the Well Brain. So it is, I will put it in the chat.
Okay.
Something right in there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Something about light and color. My background's photography, and we had to know all this stuff at one point.
Yes.
But daylight is 5,000 degrees Kelvin. And we like that, and the problem with like a fluorescent bulb, they're 1,300 degrees Kelvin. It's a green light. Your mind changes it, but it's taking energy to do that. Regular old light bulbs were 33 and 3,500, which produce more of an orange glow. When you go outside at sunset and you see that the trees get that beautiful orange and color in them, and you feel so peaceful, our brain actually likes that, and it's not that far of a jump. A lot of the new daylight LED bulbs are 55 and 6,000 degrees. They're harsh. I can't have those on. I've bought them and then thrown them away at $30 a bulb and gone back down to one my brain thinks of. So changing your light source, fluorescents flicker as like little strobe lights nonstop, and their color's different. Although you can buy them at 5,000 degrees Kelvin now. They're called K. See, in the old days, if you bought one of those, it's because you were growing pot in your basement and the FBI showed up. Now they sell them at Home Depot. You just walk in and buy them. But because it helps your brain. Lighting's important to keep your brain still.
Oh, that was some awesome facts. So our brain, it was 5,000?
5,000 is your typical outside daylight Kelvin. The range is, if you look at the rainbow, it goes into millimicrons, which is 300 to 700, which is what we see. Dogs see well past that into the 900s. That's why they see heat. And you can see an animal in the bush where we don't see it.
Right.
But that's what we are. And other species have a greater view. But we had to learn it for film. The modern cameras fix it for you.
Waring hitting me with some facts. And I love learning. And I'm, like I said, I'm a nerd. So teach me all. I love it. Thanks for the share, Waring. That was awesome.
So Taryn, I have a question.
Go for it, Lisa.
Obviously you have a very long history with Kylie. So I guess I'm asking the community as well, so Kylie is in her 6th concussion recovery as we speak. She's a nursing student and she's been a huge advocate for herself. I'm really proud of her. But it's still, I'm finding even like the nurse practitioner that's up in the wellness center there just doesn't have a good understanding. So they've given her extra time. They've given her to be able to have a printed test versus the computer. But they now have said to her, she's made up all of her tests, which is the really hard part for her, and she's doing phenomenal. But they've come back and now said that you have to do all the homework, which then she came and tried to advocate for herself. You know, why do I need to do this homework if I've already proven, you know, with my testing that I did okay? And they said it's just because part of the program. So I'm asking the community, any ideas? I want to step in, but my daughter's 21. Really difficult to do this. But I'm at a point now that I really feel like a parent has to step in and educate these, you know, medical providers. And I'm a medical provider, but I mean, I've learned 1,000% more just because of my experience with Kylie and her concussions. But I guess I'm just asking for some advice on what would you guys do? I mean, I want to step in.
Yeah, I'm going to speak as a mom and a caregiver as well. Alex, my oldest daughter, has had 6 TBIs too. And hers was after a lot of sports. Her last 2 were cars. And she was not, you know, she was away at school when these were happening. So I never got to really see them. And it wasn't until number 4 when things really started to fall apart for her. Then she got better, but again, not really good rehab like what I've learned about. And then 5 and 6 doozies. Had to step in because she became suicidal. And, you know, she was doing great academically, but was going to jump in front of the bus unless she got immediate help. So there is a balancing act with Alex, because now she's 23 and she was also not agreeing that she needed even vision therapy done, because she didn't necessarily see how much it helped her sister because she was away. But I simply approached Alex with the position of, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but let's just rule it out. So she listened to that, but even she still has some therapy that she has to go through, particularly with the dopamine and the serotonin levels and her chronic fatigue. Her cortisols are like sky high in comparison to a normal person's cortisol levels. So all of that kind of feeds and fuels into, I do believe, like a lot of her anxiety, where she doesn't want somebody to come in and ruffle the feathers of somebody else. So it is definitely a balancing act. And then I think if there's survivors here to kind of chime in how they would feel, it might give you some ideas. But I still have to kind of get Alex to come one more step to get some QEEG therapy for her brain waves, to get the dopamine and the other issues addressed as well too. But that's how I would approach it.
I'd like to make a response to that. I suffered my TB. Well, it was a traumatic. Well, it was a brain bleed, basically, right there 20 years ago, and I thankfully am not cognitively impaired, and I have no memory issues. But what I can't speak on is I would go into a doctor appointment. I'm a nurse background. I'd go into a doctor appointment and they wouldn't speak to me. They would speak to whoever with me. Like, one of y'all could give me a ride. And they'd say, well, what did she have for breakfast? No one on this entire panel has a clue what I have for breakfast. So I started making them stay in the waiting room.
Yep.
Is what I did, but it didn't happen overnight. I would still go in and they would not want to speak to me. Are you by yourself? I'm like, yeah, so that's how I approach it, but it didn't happen, like I said, right away. It took time. So I don't know if that helps or any, but that's just the way I see it.
Thank you.
That's a beautiful awareness. Donna, thank you for sharing that. Yeah. it's okay to make this statement just because I have sustained a brain injury does not mean that my intelligence is less. It is okay to say that sentence out loud to someone and make the sentence, please speak to me. I'm the patient. They're my support person, but I'm the patient. So Donna, I commend you for what you did in advocating for yourself. That was beautiful.
My favorite analogy is, and this goes for anybody with a brain injury, I feel like I have to jump hurdles just to get to the start line.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Yep. That's very,
Just a
very
fact of
true.
life. For us, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Lisa, I'm going to answer a little bit as well, in the sense that, you know, I am always someone that is strongly that people need to advocate for themselves, but asking, do you need support advocating? Is a door opener. Go ahead, Lisa.
I have asked her that, and she's so fiercely independent and doesn't want to ruffle feathers, and and functions at such a high level. I mean, but at this time, like you were saying, Lynn, I mean, she's now got 3 mental health issues going on
Mhm.
that she didn't have prior to this, last 2 concussions.
Mhm.
And I'm always in fear. Hold on. So academically, she's doing phenomenal. I'm
Right.
really proud of her. I'm just really fearful that she's walking that line. It's not going to take a lot for her to step off.
Yep.
And I feel like there's a time and a place for me to step in and take some of that burden from her, because she does phenomenal with the support. But as she says, the mom, the anxiety of going and asking and talking to another person can be overwhelming.
That just that action step alone.
Yeah.
I'm
Yes.
so sorry.
No, don't
No.
that.
Yeah. I mean, and so it's good for the group to see, as a caregiver, we do want to take over, right? We want to be that good helicopter parent.
Right.
I also found that timing was crucial. Alex, my daughter, is on that fine line too. She's taking Prozac, which I don't agree with, because again, as a researcher, I know these long-term consequences, and she's got these other issues going on. I also learned, because she's very headstrong too, Lisa, and she is in grad school trying to push through and doesn't want to ask for help. Same thing. And I get it, the anxiety. And so I think it's that warrior mentality that I'm going to get through it. And it's, again, can we shift that mindset of everybody? So I found that there are opportune times to have a conversation with her to see if I can help. And being able to identify that time, not when they're down low, right? Because that's the worst time. But not when they're doing really great either. But I know that if I could open the door a little and just make her start to think the what if. And if she looks at it, and this is to Brandon and to, who was the other, Lisa, was it Lisa who spoke? I think she may have left. Saying how you have to jump through these hurdles. I think, to their credit, they also need to jump through the hurdles. I think that helps them realize that they're getting their own independence. Oh, it was Donna, getting their own independence back as well. So, and Natalie had to tell me too, Mom, I'm okay. I'm okay. I can do this. Right. So it's back and forth on that communication. So, but I feel your pain. I do.
I want to add, Lisa, when I just had a couple of surgeries, I had a friend of mine come into the room with me because she might hear things differently or whatever than I hear. But like what works best for me is I throw that elephant right out in the room right from the get-go. I say, she's here, she's my ride, she's my friend, she's my other set of ears.
Yep.
You know, that way it lets them know, you know, straight up. So I don't know, maybe that's an idea that you might pass to your daughter. And thankfully, I'm a little more boisterous than my own mother. And so she's never been, you know, where she takes over or tries to, you know, because she's been around me a long time. But maybe asking your daughter, do you mind? And just letting them know, letting the doctor or the nurse or whoever, just let them know. The first couple of times is very hard, but you get good at it, you know?
Yeah, I like that, because I think it's where, you know, to, again, what Brandon and both Donna said, you've got to do it on your own and get that foothold, and we have to let them as well.
It's a fine line. Yeah.
Yeah. So there were some questions about, you know,
Yeah.
the sugar and
Okay.
all of that as well too. So I answered some of it, and then I'll let you kind of address it as well, Taryn. Right. So sugar is a fiend to brain health,
Yes.
period. And so now, speaking as a researcher really quickly, one of the things that all the great big huge food companies did was employ food scientists.
Mhm.
And a food scientist is somebody who has devised crackers, for example, the air pop crackers, so that they actually release serotonin in your mouth and elicit this dopamine response, an addictive response in your brain. And you can't just eat one cracker, you have to eat the whole bag. And I was privy to seeing this research, and I was aghast at it at the same time. Like, how dare they manipulate people, not just with commercials, but literally with what they're putting in their mouths.
The
And so,
chemistry.
yeah, and so it is very addictive. And so one of the solutions that we had, and we still have the issues because there's this endocrine problem with Natalie, is the sugar intake, right? And so she wants to have the sugar, it gives you the buzz, same with the caffeine. But what I can say is to keep a very higher protein diet, you know, throughout the whole day. And try to really notice when you are hungry. So I'll let you address that too. But that's what we discovered.
From a speech language pathology background, the placement of these sorts of items on our tongue, right? To not get too sciencey, but a little bit, within those spaces within your taste buds, even after you've brushed your teeth with a standard toothbrush, right? That chemistry sits on your tongue, which elicits and supports that additional craving as well. So things like tongue brushing or tongue scraping absolutely have a place as well. So like if you've got this one craving and you're going to have that one item and you're going to allow yourself to have, you know, I'm going to call it one mini Justin's peanut butter cup. I use that maybe because I like them.
Me too.
It is have the item, but then recognize, and give it that joy and satisfaction. That tasted so good. I savored it. I enjoyed it. Verbalize it. Give it the value that like you want to give it out loud, but then go ahead and clean that tongue.
Or this is a trick that I have done. If I have a whole candy bar, I can't eat chocolate anymore because of my mold allergies now. But when I was in a cast and crutches for a year, I couldn't barely exercise. And so I had to be really careful, you know, and COVID, right? I gained 9 pounds with COVID. Okay. So I'm trying to lose my 9 pounds. So I'm going to have a cookie, but I break a small part of the cookie off and I throw it away, have the rest of the cookie, and I have no guilt, right? And so one of the other tricks, and when I did Weight Watchers research, and the research was for type 2 diabetes, it really ended up being, how do you hold yourself accountable?
Mhm.
And so if you chart out for the whole day, and I think this speaks to the organization,
Yes.
if I'm going to have this,
Yeah.
this is what I'm going to have. I'm a creature of habit. I do this myself, you know, and so that's just another way to address that kind of a problem. Before we go, because it's already after 4, but
Yeah.
Taryn, I thought you were, I saw on your slide that people can contact you for a free consult. Is that
Yes.
okay? So I didn't hear that. So I wanted everybody to know. And if it's okay if I put that in the email to
Yes.
contact you as well too, because it's, you know, your circle looks like this. And then tomorrow your circle might be like this.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
I think that's really, really important to understand that concept better, because that was the aha when we met.
Yeah.
The other thing, and then I'll let you go ahead and wrap it up. The other thing I wanted to share with everybody, which I hinted to in the beginning,
Yes.
was that, you know, Taryn talked a lot about all of these goals and these triggers, and that's what our app does. And that was what kind of united us, was that she's able to use the app to meet and talk with and set goals with her clients. But we won a competition within MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And if you all know, not everybody has been with us for the whole year, but I've been talking about signals in the data, and that I do know that if we get enough data, we will be able to put people in the same injury buckets or the same kind of buckets, and now say 2 brain injuries are alike. This is what they need help with. So MIT validated our algorithms, and MIT then did an additional drill down and said, Lynn, you're right. You're onto something. They found the first signal based upon how someone is injured, what therapy should be ordered first. And it's like groundbreaking. And so one of the problems we know within this community is not being able to say, you should have this therapy first. You should have this therapy. The signal they found, and next in 2 weeks, I will go to the team's presentation. And you guys, I won, I didn't win money. I won their work. And so we beat the Deutsche Bank of Germany. We beat massive international shipping companies. We beat the US Olympics team. That's how groundbreaking and needed this is. But the first signal they found, and Waring, I am going to be honest and tell you, I thought about you and my daughter, was fault. Was the injury your fault or not your fault? And that signal, the doctor, a chief medical officer, is leading this team of data scientists for me. That doctor, when she finished the first presentation to me, said, Lynn, if I know this information on my patients, I am going to order services immediately for them about cognitive behavior therapy and how to address the fault issue. Because if you think about it for 1 second, we all have monkey chatter, whether we have a broken brain or not. But when you have an injury, and it's not a disease, when you have an injury in your brain, which can be rehabbed to a certain point, right? Everything is all bases upon the injury. But when you then have an injury introduced into our normal monkey chatter that life throws at us, we exasperate all of those conditions to a new level. So that means cortisol takes off. That means cortisol can impact blood pressure. It can impact anxiety. It can impact eating habits. It can impact sleep, the whole chronic listing all the way down. So it's really exciting. I don't have all the final reports yet. They just kind of gave me a peek, but I'm like, holy cow, this is a big deal. So
I can't wait to nerd out on that.
it's kind of like, I do celebrate Christmas. I don't know what anybody else celebrates, but I embrace everything. But for me, that was like an early Christmas present. I was like, holy cow. So yeah, so we're
Wow.
going to be going at this pretty hard, and
Good.
I'm excited. So I wanted to share that, and it's all because of you guys, right?
That's
Because your data is driving the decision making. So it's exciting. So thank you.
Tracking with a purpose, not
Mhm.
only personal purpose, but greater good purpose. Like that is, oh, that's just gorgeous. Oh, I have goosebumps, by the way, on top of the awful rash.
All right. So I'm going to let you wrap up. You've
Yes.
gone way past. So you now you win. You're like the
Thank-
winner. Like you've closed out the year with the longest webinar.
Well,
So-
I appreciate the people who had the stamina to maintain. I recognize that that's important. I would like to say, for the people who left early, thank you for being here. And also thank you for recognizing that you needed to leave, because I celebrate that awareness, that self-care, that perception of what you need, and doing that with power and strength. So thank you guys. Lynn, I am so grateful to connect with your beautiful community. And, feel free, people, to reach out and just check in with me. See if I'm a really big proponent of, if your goals align with my skill set, I will tell you. If they don't, I will also give you recommendations for who I think might, because there is absolutely nothing worse in the medical community to step into someone's office or in my virtual space, and for them to recognize right away that they're not a match for serving you, and yet they do. I don't believe in that. And so there are certain things that I know I do based on my skill set and who I can best support. But I also recognize that I'm going to celebrate and support the colleagues that maybe are a better match for you, because there's beauty in getting you those services. I am 100% about getting best care out for brain injury recovery, because this invisible injury deserves so much more support and encouragement and validation, and people like Lynn, and like myself, who are going to be on this journey with you. So thank you very much for letting me speak in here. I hope you use the circle of life in some way that serves you, and speaks to you, and it can be part of your maybe next big move. So do that circle, do it again in 2 weeks, and see what it looks like in 6 months. It's so cool to take a look at them like little journal pages. So
Taryn, do you want to put your email one more time
absolutely
into the chat for everyone? And this is
I want to find out if you thought I caused my accident or not when you thought of me.
No, I do not think you caused your accident. No. Because I remember you telling about it. And the reason I also thought about you, because Natalie didn't cause hers either, right? And but I remember you told me how you were projectiled, right? And you flew, because one of the next things that I told the team that I want is, we have all of the accident data that we can request access to. And there you
sorry.
That's okay. You can put it in the chat if that's easier, Taryn.
There we go.
There you go. But so
I had your page up, so it was perfect.
Oh yeah. So there you go. But Waring, what I was thinking was that, when you talked about your injury, and it was you were on the motorcycle and you went flying, there is a bunch of data that is available for public consumption that we can actually apply. Force mass equals accelerate. Force times mass equals accelerate. Mass times F equals ma. Mass times acceleration equals force. So the force of your impact is able to be calculated, because what I'm trying to calculate is a severity score, because too many people say, oh, it's just mild, oh, it's just moderate, and it's not accurate at all. But we can actually use automobile data. And because you were able to say, in my car accident, I was thrown, I hit a tree, all of those metrics are available to calculate the impact on your head. And that makes you have a completely different look in terms of the severity index of your injury. So that's why it made me think of you.
Yeah, the flying didn't hurt me. It was that sudden stop at the end.
At the tree.
That pesky inertia thing. If the guy hadn't invented that, we'd have been so much better off.
Right,
You
right,
know.
right. I mean, and your attitude is now your attitude is great. I don't know what your attitude was for the first few years or not, but so anyway, so when you're able to kind of start dissecting it like that, then we're able to actually calculate real severity scores. And what will these scores tell us? They'll tell us that this person may take a lot longer, or this person may need more services longer, right? That's the first step, is, as I've been saying, to first be able to characterize a populace, to truly understand what they look like by numbers, even though that sounds kind of rude because we're trying to personalize the care. But if we're able to know true impact on the brain, like how many times it's jostled around, that's really important to know, because that's going to give us a true severity score.
And that then takes into account like the financial planning, because you can look at trajectory of recovery that
Yeah.
looks at physical needs, rehab needs. Oh, the
Yeah.
then the replication of what that does is
Right,
gorgeous. Kudos,
right.
Lynn. Kudos.
Thank you. And Chris, I know that you're on so Chris, yes, we are going to chat more. So I had a call with a lawyer today because of this finding. And so this is why it's important to keep tracking. It's okay to take pauses. It's okay, because that's human nature, right? But I mentioned this finding to the lawyer who's involved with the ACL, and the ACL is a part of all of these grants that go out to all of the states for their brain trusts and disabilities, et cetera. And my daughter didn't, she was not successful with, the accident that hurt her. So this is all a part of being able to get what's due you and what's fair. And when I told him of this, I said, the only way the AMA and the powers that be at the insurance companies are going to listen is to get lawyers involved. And now I have data to prove there are deficits that people are seeing immediately, and to give them 8 weeks of therapy is BS. So anyway, so now I'm going to the groups that are able to make these waves with me, and I'll show them the data. So anyway, so that's where we're going.
Make
I'm
those
a
waves.
fun for your brain, and I will provide you with any of the research that I have as well that will help you as well.
Okay, that's awesome. And one of the other things too is that I want to do is I want to support this community, because many of you are not able to work. And so we've been writing blogs every week. And so I'm going to put together a plan to pay people. I don't have a lot because I support the company myself until I start generating revenue, but I want to pay people from the community to write blogs for us. And so I'm going to put together a list of blogs and just see if it tickles your fancy. And it's on your own time. You don't have to meet deadlines. It's when you get it done, you get it done. So I'm bringing that forward for 2022 as well too. So, and I told him, I said, I have been told, not only with my own daughters, trying to get disability and work, et cetera, but even people in our community here with Power Patients, that if they get quote paid, they'll lose their disability. And the lawyer did tell me there are ways around it.
Yes.
And so I said, okay, then now we're getting somewhere. So more to come on all of this.
Just so you know that my disability appeal is at the appeals council level.
Okay.
It's been denied even at the hearing level.
Wow. So this is,
they don't recognize TBI as a disability.
Yeah. So next week, I believe it's next week, it's the week after Thanksgiving, I am meeting with the CDC TBI team. They're very interested in the app and the data that we're generating, and they have now declared TBI a chronic condition. So
I would love to share with you because I ended up having to write my own brief and make my own appeal to the appeals council, because my attorney terminated me less than 2 weeks before the deadline because I requested a meeting with him to give him, because I have communication issues, obviously, because I have a TBI.
Mhm.
But because of my medical background, I needed to meet with him to strategize. And he terminated me less than 2 weeks before the deadline, stating that I was making unreasonable demands because he said that I didn't need to be involved with the case, that him and his team would take care of it.
Oh
So
God.
I ended up doing my own appeal, and the appeals council had agreed to review my appeal themselves within 2 weeks. So I'm waiting for and typically it takes them almost 2 years to decide. And within 2 weeks, they decide to review it themselves.